Hello, Mythology friends. Welcome to the Legends Through Time Oldies channel, a place where ancient stories come back to life through narratives full of meaning and imagination. Today, we dive into one of the most epic tales from Greek mythology, the story of the birth of hope, the rebellion against tyranny in the great war between the gods and the Titans. From the first betrayal of Kronos to the birth of Zeus, who brought light amidst the darkness. This is the legend that changed the fate of the world and paved the way for the era of the gods. Prepare yourself, for this story is not just about strength, but also courage, sacrifice, and the inevitability of fate. And that's the full story of how Zeus rose from hiding, overthrew his tyrant father, and forged a new world order with his brothers. A story that teaches that hope can be born even from the deepest darkness, and that the courage of one soul can change the destiny of an entire universe. In the beginning of all that exists, the world was not formed as it is known today. There was no land or sky, no sea or starry sky. Everything was just primeval chaos, called chaos, a void entity that enveloped space and time with uncertainty. From this chaos came the first entities: Gaia, the earth; Tartarus, the darkest abyss of the underworld; and Eros, the love that gave rise to the will to unite and create. Gaia, in her long solitude, gave birth to Uranus, the night sky that stretches endlessly. When Uranus overshadowed Gaia with its silvery horizon and myriads of stars, the two merged in cosmic harmony. From this union, mighty children were born, the Titans, immortal giants of towering height and immense power. But Gaia's happiness was short-lived. Uranus, who began to feel the threat of his children's power, became despotic. He was afraid of losing his power. So whenever Gaia gave birth to children, Uranus hid them back in Gaia's belly, forcing her to endure unimaginable suffering. Embedded in the Earth's womb, the Titans roared in darkness and constriction, while Gaia whimpered in unrelenting pain. Eventually, the meek Gaia was transformed. Pain and betrayal gave birth to rage. She gathered the last of her strength and went to her imprisoned children. In a wounded whisper, she persuaded them to free herself and bring down their father. However, fear of Uranus's power made the Titans tremble. They refused. Only Kronos, the youngest Titan, had the courage and ingenuity to answer his mother's call. His eyes shone with ambition and vengeance. He wanted not only to save his mother, but also to take the throne of the world. Gaia created a weapon, a serrated scythe of adamantium, sharp and invincible. With the scythe, Kronos waited for the right moment. One night, when Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, heaven and earth reunited in a false embrace. It was there that Kronos hid in the darkness. As Uranus's body stretched out to envelop Gaia, Kronos swung his scythe with the power of all the oppressed Titans. The scythe slashed through Uranus's body with a cosmic boom. The sky screamed. The blood of the heavens spilled over the earth, creating new beings, the Erinyes, goddesses of vengeance. The giants, and from the froth of blood that fell into the sea, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was born. Battered and broken, Uranus swore with his last breath, his voice echoing from the ends of the sky. "You may take this throne, Kronos, but remember, your own son will overthrow you, just as you overthrew me today." With Uranus eliminated, Kronos freed the Titans and ruled the world from the top of Mount Othrys. The world stabilized. He married his sister, Rhea, goddess of fertility and mother of all. Together they brought a golden age to the gods and earthlings. However, his father's prophecy continued to haunt Kronos. Every night, he saw the image of an unborn child, growing up to take power from him. He could not sleep, his eyes were restless, his mind filled with worry. He knew that if he let the prophecy take its course, he would meet the same fate as Uranus. So when Rhea gave birth to her first child, Hestia, Kronos looked into the tiny baby's eyes and without hesitation swallowed her alive. Rhea screamed in horror, but Kronos simply said, "This is for the future of power." So it was when the next children were born: Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. One by one, they were swallowed by their own father, vanishing into the darkness of the Titan's belly, just as Uranus had once done to the Titans. Rhea wailed in silence, her heart broken into pieces. She felt like a childless mother, a womb that never really gave birth. Every cry of the baby only ended in painful silence. But she was helpless. Her husband, the ruler of heaven, earth, and sea, could not be resisted. But silently, Rhea began to harbor hope and vengeance. She vowed that if one day her sixth child was born, she would not give him up so easily. The spring sky hung gray when Rhea felt pain radiating from her stomach. She knew the time had come. Her sixth child was about to be born, and if she didn't do something, the baby would end up like the previous five siblings, swallowed up by his own father. But this time, Rhea did not want to stay silent. Her eyes had been filled with sorrow and fear for too long. She had witnessed the cruelty of Kronos, her husband and the ruler of heaven and earth, who kept swallowing their flesh and blood to avoid their destiny. Burning with determination and motherly love, Rhea fled the palace of Mount Othrys and sought refuge with the only person she trusted, Gaia, mother of the earth, who once helped Kronos overthrow Uranus. In the darkness of the primeval forest, Rhea prostrated herself before Gaia. "Mother, I can no longer lose my child. Please help me save this baby." Gaia, who had seen the injustice repeated, embraced Rhea with the warm arms of the earth and in a soft whisper, devised a plan to save the unborn baby as the world's last hope. The moment her baby was born, Rhea immediately sailed across the sea, taking her tiny newborn baby to cry for the first time to the island of Crete, a sacred land far from the watchful eye of Kronos. At the foot of Mount Ida, hidden in a vast cavern adorned with ancient crystals and immortal tree roots, the baby was handed over to the gentle and wise guardian spirit nymphs of nature. They vowed to care for it as their own child. Guarding the cave stood the Kurtai, a group of loyal bronze-clad warriors who beat their shields and danced whenever the baby cried. The beat of their war dance echoed in the mountain crevices, disguising the baby's cries from the ears of the ever-watchful Kronos. Meanwhile, Rhea returned to Mount Othrys carrying a large stone wrapped in a white cloth, resembling a newborn baby. She shivered as she handed her child to Kronos. Unsuspecting and merciless, Kronos swallowed the stone whole, satisfied that one more prophecy had been averted. Little did he know that this time he had just swallowed his own folly. Rhea wept silently, not because of loss, but because for the first time she had managed to save a child. In the cave of Mount Ida, the baby grew quickly. The nymphs fed him milk from Amalthea, a magical goat with golden horns and white fur as white as the clouds. Her milk had celestial powers, giving endurance, strength, and wisdom to whoever drank it. Amalthea also gave him the love of a mother. When Amalthea's horn was broken, the nymphs blessed it into a cornucopia, or horn of plenty, symbolizing the blessings that would always accompany Zeus. Zeus, the hidden infant, grew into a strong and intelligent young man. In the cave, he learned not only how to survive, but also about a world ruled by fear and tyranny. Gaia often came in the form of wind or rumbling earth, whispering stories of the past to him about his father Kronos, about his 5 brothers being swallowed alive, and about the ancient prophecy that now resides within him. "You are the hope, Zeus. One day, you will overthrow tyranny and free the world." In his eyes began to grow a spirit different from the Titans. Not just power, but justice. Not just ambition, but hope. After years hidden in the bowels of the earth, the long-awaited moment had finally arrived. Zeus, now grown into a valiant, brave, and intelligent young man, climbs the path to his destiny. With divine power inherited from the elder gods and wisdom from Gaia, he left Crete for Mount Olympus, where his father, Kronos, sat on the throne with an iron fist and a heart frozen with fear. But Zeus did not come as a hero. He came in shadow and disguise. He infiltrated Kronos' palace disguised as a young servant, wine-bearer, and table entertainer. Day after day he observed, learning the habits of the ruler. Night after night she harbored burning anger and longing for the brothers she had never known because they had all been swallowed alive. On his way to Olympus, Zeus met Metis, the goddess of wisdom and reason. He knew that physical strength alone would not defeat Kronos. He needed a plan. He needed ingenuity. Metis, seeing great potential in Zeus, created a special potion from ancient roots and water from the Lethe River. A potion that, when drunk, would force the body to release all the contents of the stomach, even those that had been hidden for centuries. Give him this, and in an instant, what he lost will return. Metis whispered as he handed over a small vial filled with a faintly glowing golden liquid. On a still night, when the skies of Olympus were covered with wispy clouds and the wind carried whispers of destiny, Zeus brought the cup of wine before Kronos. With a quiet gesture, he poured the elixir of Metis into his father's drink. He bowed respectfully, hiding the look in his eyes that burned with hope. Kronos, who never suspected his own servants, drank the wine in one gulp. A moment later, his eyes widened. His body trembled. He writhed and whimpered, then fell to his knees, vomiting violently before the entire palace. From within her powerful body, one by one, the 5 children she had swallowed long ago reappeared: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Miraculously, the time they had spent in the Titan's stomach had shaped them into adults, each with the power of a mature god. They rose from the vomit not as victims, but as warriors of fate. Their eyes looked fearlessly at Kronos, eyes that held the suffering they had swallowed and the desire for justice. In the silence after the chaos, Zeus stood in the center of his brothers. He raised his hands to the sky and swore, "By heaven and earth, by our mother's blood, and by the wounds inflicted by our own father, we will overthrow the rule of the Titans and create a new, more just world." The other 5 brothers nodded. Hades grasped the ground and swore an oath of darkness. Poseidon created waves in his hands and swore over the ocean. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia swore by the love and life they protected. They are no longer just children of Kronos. They are the new gods, the bearers of hope and revolution. Shortly after, the first clink of war was heard in the primeval valley. The Titanomachy, the greatest war in the history of Greek mythology, broke out, shaking the world from the summit of Olympus to the abyss of Tartarus. On one side stood the Titans, led by Kronos, and backed by ancient powers, giant armies, and ancient beings. On the other side stood the Olympians, 6 brothers led by Zeus, bringing a light of hope, courage, and strength not seen since the days of creation. The sky split, the mountains roared, the oceans rose in waves of fury. At the edge of a vast world, 2 of the oldest powers collide in a merciless war of the Titans and the Olympian gods. To the south, Mount Othrys stood strong as the last bastion of the Titans. Kronos, the king who had swallowed his own children to maintain power, summoned his brothers, Iapetus, Koios, Hyperion, and Cryos, the ancient Titans who were equal to gods in strength and age. They established a line that shook the ground, an army of giant beings and conquered celestial powers. Meanwhile, in the north, on the eternally cloud-covered summit of Mount Olympus, Zeus and his 5 brothers upheld the banner of rebellion. Every day, lightning flashed from the sky, a sign that the young gods would not submit. They fought not just for the throne, but for the future of the world. The battle lasted for 10 whole years. Day and night were no longer distinguished by sunlight, but only by the light of the fires of war. The thunder of lightning and the groans of the cracking earth. Mountains erupted, seas rose inland, and the sky burned red. Hestia guarded the hearth of Olympus. Demeter turned the land into a battlefield, and Hera led the line of gods with unwavering charisma. But despite their great power, the Titans remain sturdy. They have lived through the primeval ages. Their bodies are as big as mountains. Their breath shakes the wind, and their rage has buried previous generations. Neither side was able to gain the upper hand. The world was about to crumble amidst the power of 2 generations of gods wiping each other out. Seeing the hopeless stalemate, Zeus made a great decision. He descended into the deepest depths of the world of Tartarus, the prison of darkness beneath all hell. It was there that the ancient beings were locked up by Kronos, the Cyclops, a one-eyed giant who could forge weapons from lightning and magma, and the Hecatonaires, giants of 100 arms and 50 heads, creatures of chaos feared even by the Titans. Zeus freed them. In return, the Cyclops created sacred weapons for the gods: the eternal thunderbolt for Zeus, a weapon of celestial destruction; the trident of the sea for Poseidon, capable of shaking the oceans; the helmet of darkness for Hades, which made him invisible even by the light of the sun. The Hecatonaires, with earth-shaking power, stood by the side of the Olympians, lifting giant boulders and cutting through the Titan ranks like a storm. With new powers, the gods launched a massive attack that shook the world order. Zeus hurled lightning bolts from the sky, burning mountains and scorching the Titan ranks. Poseidon raised a tsunami as high as Kronos' palace and slammed into Mount Othrys from the seaside. Hades, hidden by his helmet of darkness, infiltrated the heart of the Titan base and disrupted their strategy from within, freeing captives, destroying weapons, and casting fear like a shadow of death. While Hestia kept up the morale of the troops, Demeter turned the land into a natural trap, and Hera led the army of gods and celestial beings loyal to them. Finally, the world witnessed the final duel between father and son Zeus against Kronos. The sky darkened. The wind stopped. Nature held its breath. Kronos, with the heirloom scythe he once used to overthrow Uranus, stood in terrible splendor. Zeus, with a flaming thunderbolt in his hand, stared at his father with undaunted eyes. "Father swallowed the future. Now I will give it back," Zeus said before attacking. The duel shook the bones of the earth. Lightning and scythes struck each other. Their sound penetrated the underworld and shook the highest heavens. Time seemed to stand still as two divine generations fought for the fate of the world. Finally, with one mighty thunderbolt, Zeus struck Kronos in the chest, toppling the king of the Titans. He grabbed the dislodged scythe and, with a terrible symbol of irony, used the same weapon to finish off the power of his own father, sealing the destiny that had been spinning for 3 generations. Zeus stood over the battlefield, his body covered in dust and lightning. The Titans were defeated, the world fell silent, and the Olympian gods stood as the new rulers of the universe. After 10 years of war and devastating duels that shook heaven and earth, the Titanomachy came to an end. Kronos, the despotic king who once swallowed his children, now fell. His body slumped over the ruins of the ancient empire he had built. Zeus, with his heirloom scythe in hand and lightning bolts blazing in the sky, declared the end of the era of the Titans. The Titans who sided with Kronos were subdued one by one. Hyperion, Iapetus, Koios, and Krios were captured and shackled by divine chains, forged from the ice of Tartarus and primordial fire. Hades, now lord of the underworld, opened the gates to the deepest abyss beneath the earth of Tartarus, a dark prison that even light refused to touch. It was there that the Titans were cast, locked away for all eternity, guarded by Hecaton Keres, now loyal to Zeus. With 100 tireless hands, they guarded the gates of the underworld so that the evils of the past would not rise again. Kronos himself was banished to Tartarus, not just as punishment, but as a symbol that ancient, oppressive power was buried. However, not all Titans were punished. Themis, Mnemosyne, and Prometheus, who did not side with Kronos, were given a place of honor in the new world. Now the world lay wild, unorganized, and waiting for new leaders. 3 brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, stood before destiny. They agreed not to fight over territory with war, but to leave the decision to the divine lottery. Zeus drew the first lot, and fate gave him heaven, the highest place, a throne atop Mount Olympus. He became the ruler of the gods, wielder of lightning, and protector of the world order. Poseidon got the ocean, a kingdom that was deep, vast, and infinite. He rules over the waves, storms, and all creatures that swim in the depths. Hades received the underworld, the place of the spirits, the secrets of death, and the riches of the earth. Although dark, he accepted it wisely, becoming the guardian of the balance between life and death. With that, the 3 pillars of the universe were formed. Zeus ascended the throne in the palace of Olympus, surrounded by the gods and goddesses now gathered as one force. At his side stood Hera, his graceful and strong sister, the future queen of Olympus. Together with his sisters Demeter, the goddess of fertility, Hestia, the keeper of the furnace, Poseidon, and Hades, Zeus established the new heavenly order. He regulated the heavens and the weather, watched over the mortals on earth, and enforced the laws of the gods. In his hands, lightning was not just a weapon, but a symbol of justice and power. Olympus became the inaccessible sanctuary of the sacred mountain, where the gods sat in great council, deciding the fate of the world. The world entered the age of the gods when Olympus shone in the sky, and the gods maintained harmony between nature, humans, and spirits. Mountains, rivers, stars, and winds were given rulers, and mortals began to worship the new gods who ruled from above the clouds. However, despite the victory, the shadows of the past had not completely disappeared. Gaia, the Earth Mother, was not entirely satisfied with the fate of her children, the Titans. Deep in the bowels of the earth, she began to whisper of the rise of more ancient forces, the Gigants, and later the Typhon, the last monster that would test Zeus's power. But for now, the world was calm. Lightning flashed not as a threat, but as a light of protection, and humans began to recognize the sky not as a mystery, but as the home of new rulers. A new era was born, the era of the gods and goddesses of Olympus. Thank you for coming along on this journey with us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on other mythological stories from around the world. See you in the next story, and remember, every myth holds a lesson, and every legend is waiting to be discovered. We, Legends Through Time Oldies, say goodbye and hello mythology.